Hello and welcome to my book review of The Cat Who Saved Books, a novel by Sosuke Natsukawa. And the front cover looks pretty cool. It's got a cat walking through some books. It's a really good looking cover. The Cat Who Saved Books is a short novel. I mean, the pages, the pages are read pretty quickly because the print's not that small. And there's only like 195 pages, so it's a quick read, but it's an interesting read, and I'll tell you why. The Cat Who Saved Books, I feel like the name is kind of misleading because it makes it sound like the cat who is named Tiger the Tabby Cat, or Tiger the Tabby. He's a character in the book, but he's not the main character. The main character is Rintaro Natsuki. And it starts off, and Rintaro is in the middle of grieving from the death of his grandpa, who was taking care of him. He didn't live with his parents. His parents were already out of the picture, and he lived with his grandpa, but his grandfather passed away. And his grandfather ran an old bookshop called Natsuki Books. And at this bookshop, they had a bunch of older, more out-of-print, used books. And they were like classical literature type of books, you know, philosophical books. Books that most people nowadays wouldn't want to read, are there would be a little audience for people who would be interested in reading them. So it was more of a rare collection of books within the Natsuki Books shop. And so it starts off like that, and Rintaro is going to have to live with his aunt now since his grandfather's passed away. But Rintaro, he's what they describe as a hikikomori, which is like a shut-in person, a person who shuts themselves off from society. And so he hasn't been going to school, and instead has been just hanging out at the bookshop. And they were going to close it down, so there was like a 10% off sale or something. But still, there's few people going there to buy books because the books are not very popular. So that's the premise of the book. And then that Tiger the Tabby shows up and tells Tiger the Tabby tells Rintaro that he needs him to go and save some books. So really, it's not the cat who saved books. It's more like the cat who led young man to save books. Basically, that's what it's basically about. So Tiger the Tabby takes him through the back of the bookstore. There's like a bluish glowing light that comes up in the back of the bookstore, and then it's like they walk through the back and they end up in a different place, and they go to what they call labyrinths. So he goes through one labyrinth, and the guy he reads like 10,000 books a year or something like that. He reads a bunch of books I think it's 100 books every month or something. And so this guy, he just reads books, and then he puts them on display, you know, in a display case. But basically he was just hoarding the books instead of giving them away or selling them so someone else could enjoy the book. And so Rintaro, for the first guy, he basically has to convince this guy, you know, who's keeping the books, hoarding the books, that it's better not to just read a whole bunch of books, and that it's just good to enjoy the books and then let them go instead of holding them captive, basically. And the guy finally agrees with him. Then in the second labyrinth, Rintaro Natsuki is joined by his classmate and class rep president or whatever, you know, Sayo, who's a girl, and ends up being his love interest for the book. And they go and the second ruler of the labyrinth, I guess, I don't know how you would say it, but the boss of the labyrinth is a guy, and he's been developing a speed reading summary technique that basically he's the mutilator of books. So he's going around and he's chopping down books into the smallest amount of words, basically. He's just trying to get things to like a paragraph or just a couple sentences to summarize a whole book. and thus he's the Mutilator books. Then they see him in his office, and he's got a book in one hand, scissors in the other, and he's cutting the pages, parts of the pages off, and papers flying everywhere. So, and the whole time he's playing some Beethoven symphony or whatever. And so the way they defeat him is Rintaro is trying to explain to him that it's not good to just summarize a book, and that the reader should experience the whole book. And so read this book. Don't just listen to me talk about it and summarize it for you. But he's saying that, you shouldn't just read a summary or speed read. You need to read the whole book, try and understand the point the author's trying to get across. That's what Rintaro's saying. And then the guy who's summarizing the books, the Mutilator books, he just doesn't understand. He thinks that what he's doing is cutting-edge research that'll make it so everyone will enjoy books. And so Rintaro fast-forwards on the cassette player of Beethoven's Symphony and fast-forwards through it, and the guy doesn't enjoy the music as much because it's being fast-forwarded, and he's not getting the whole experience of Beethoven's Symphony. And then Rintaro's, he says that that's like your book summaries. You're not enjoying the full experience of the book. You're just basically getting the end of it, you're fast-forwarding through it. You're not enjoying the whole book. And then the guy realizes that he was wrong, and then he was like, okay, Rintaro, you're right. And then they're able to go back to their bookshop, because it's always like they start in the bookshop, then the tiger, the tabby, shows up, the cat, and it talks, and they teleport through the back of the bookstore within this bluish glowing light, and then they go to the labyrinth. And then in the third one, they do the same thing. Tiger, the tabby, says this is the last time, we'll have to do this, and so they think, okay, and Sayo goes with them. She's also able to see the cat and hear the cat talk. And so, and then at one point they're going through this building. It's like a large corporation. It's like World's Best Books. It's a publishing company. That's the third labyrinth. And at one point they say they don't allow cats past this point, and so Tiger the tabby has to stay back. But Sayo and Rintaro end up going up to the president's office and meets with the presidents of World's Best Books. And then they're talking to him, trying to convince him to quit publishing so many books, basically. Or basically that's it. Because, like, in the skyscraper they're at, they see all these books falling, and they're just, like, throwing books out onto the ground, and they're just falling from the sky. But, and basically, the guy's saying that he's just wanting to print books that people want to read, instead of literary works that are like good. He's just trying to print out stuff that sells well and maximize profits for World's Best Books. And I'll read you a passage from the book, from this part. The one that books don't sell, the president laughed one more time, and then continued, "You're deluded if you think books don't sell anymore these days. Books sell really well. In fact, World's Best Books is extremely successful." "Is that supposed to be sarcasm?" says Rintaro. "It's not sarcasm at all. It's fact. It's very easy indeed to sell books, as long as you keep one fundamental rule in mind." The president regarded Rintaro with amusement. It was clear he was enjoying himself, as if revealing the secret of an amazing magic trick. He lowered his voice to a whisper. "Sell books that sell. That's the rule." A curious phrase indeed. A curious phrase that had a bizarre ring to it. "That's right," said the president. "Here at the world's #1 publishing company, we don't publish books to inform or teach people. We print the books that society wants. We don't care about issues such as messages that need to be imparted or philosophy that needs to be handed down to the next generation. We don't care about any harsh reality or difficult truths. Society isn't interested in things like that. Publishers don't need to worry about what they should be telling the world. They need to understand what the world wants to hear." "It's dangerous to be that cynical, and you have an excellent mind to have noticed that is cynical." Chuckling, the president took a cigarette from a pack on his desk and calmly lit it. "And yet, that's the reality. That's how we've managed to turn a steady profit." Beyond the purplish curl of smoke, countless books went tumbling to the ground. "If you were raised in that Natsuki Books fantasy land, then you should know this. In today's world, people don't have the time or the money to spend on literary masterpieces or any fabulously long tome. But at the same time, reading is still fashionable. It confers status. Everyone wants to brag about reading some difficult book. And so, we publish our works with these people's needs in mind. In summary, he stuck his neck out to emphasize his point. Cheap digest and abridged versions sell like crazy. He roared with laughter, his shoulders trembling. For those readers who desire a bit of stimulation, the best way is to do it with pornographic passages or gratuitous violence. And for those who lack imagination, adding a simple "this really happened" does the trick. Your circulation is increased by several percentage points, and sales soar. Rintaro felt sick to his stomach. And that was just him talking with him. And then eventually, Rintaro was able to convince the president of World's Best Books to not just print books that sell well, but to print books that actually add something to people's lives. And then, so they're able to escape the third labyrinth, and then, Rintaro thinks it's all over, but then the cat shows up again, and there's another labyrinth he has to go to, and it turns out the person in charge of it had kidnapped Sayo, who is, Rintaro's love interest, basically. And so he has to go help Sayo, rescue Sayo, basically. And this is, the last labyrinth is a woman, and she basically says she's a book that's been around 2,000 years. So, I don't know which book that was supposed to be. But, and basically Rintaro says that good books give people empathy. I think that's what it was. That was the power of books, was to be able to give people empathy or something if it was a good book. And so then eventually the person behind the last labyrinth shows the other three people from the first three labyrinths, and their lives were changed. The guy who read 100 books every month, he was no longer revered as like a scholar because they found someone who read more books than he did. And then the second guy, he was all by himself reading books, And then the third guy, he was in a board meeting and everyone was yelling at him because the books that he was coming up with weren't selling as well as when he was just trying to sell books that sell. So, but then they all said that Rintaro was right, basically, and he convinces the last woman labyrinth leader or whatever, and then he's able to go home with Sayo. And then at the end of the book, it's like, the last bit is called How It All Ended. It's kind of like the epilogue after Rintaro saved all the books through the 4 labyrinths. This is a passage I'll read. Rintaro basically is about to move in with his aunt, and then he finally decides that he wants to stay at the bookshop and live by himself and run the bookshop while he's not in school, basically. And this is a passage from that. Of course, Rintaro couldn't tell her about his bizarre adventures with a talking cat. More than that, he hadn't really come to terms at that point with how the experience had changed him. But whatever it was, he had decided it was time to strike out on his own. There was no such thing as having no choice. Rintaro knew that now. There were many roads to choose from. What was important was not to let yourself roll along aimlessly, but to pick a road. How can I move on if I don't believe in myself? Deep in that labyrinth, Rintaro had asked himself that question. His words turned into strength, and he felt able to keep going alone. The Cat Who Saved Books, while the name is misleading and you think it's about a cat mainly, it's really the cat guides Tiger the Tabby, who's the cat in the book, guides the main character Rintaro Natsuki through a journey of self-discovery and growth that allows him to basically grieve the loss of his grandfather and be someone who's more than just a bookworm that stays shut inside from society, and he's able to have relationships flower and bloom, and he's able to become more confident in himself, and be able to express himself through what he's learned from the labyrinths and through what he had read in books previously. I would say that The Cat Who Saved Books by Sosuke Natsukawa is a decent book. I mean, it's an easy, quick read, so it doesn't take very long to read. It's very quick to read, but it's also interesting, especially if you like books. I mean, if you like cats, they try and get you with The Cat Who Saved Books, but like I said, it's mostly about Rintaro Natsuki. But it's an interesting book. I would say it's worth a library checkout, which is what I did. And I would encourage everyone who thinks it sounds interesting to read it. And if you don't think it sounds interesting, if you don't think The Cat Who Saved Books by Sosuke Natsukawa sounds interesting, I hope you find another book that does sound interesting to you, and you read it and enjoy it. Just reading is a good thing, and that's what I was trying to get across with all these book reviews. Just read something, you know, anything. Just don't scroll and look at your Facebook feeds all day or your social media stuff. Just don't. Read a book at some point. Read something, you know, a newspaper or something. Reading is good, especially if you read out loud. So, please just read a book. Read a book. But overall, The Cat Who Saved Books, it's pretty good. Check it out. By Sosuke Natsukawa.